Hey everyone, Maxwell Straythorn here. Before we dive into today's thrilling Warhammer 40k lore exploration, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on all our latest content. Today, we're delving into the heart of the warp with the Lost Pack Echoes in the Warp, a gripping tale of the Fenrisian Shadows' struggle against chaos. Get ready for a journey of bravery, sacrifice, and the unyielding spirit of the Space Wolves. Let's get started. Chapter 1. The Maw of Chaos. Amidst the vast, star-studded expanse of the galaxy, the Wolf's Fang cut a formidable figure. The Space Wolves, known as the Fenrisian Shadows, clad in armor etched with runes of power, stood ready. Their mission, to repel a chaos incursion threatening an imperial world. Brother Hrothgar, their leader, stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the void. His pack, veterans of countless battles, manned the guns and shield systems, responding to each of Hrothgar's commands with the precision of seasoned warriors. The Chaos Fleet, a twisted mirror of the Imperium's might, clashed with the Wolf's Fang. The void erupted with the light of lance strikes and the thunder of cannon fire. Explosions dotted the battlefield, as ships from both sides succumbed to the fury of war. Amid the chaos, a sinister phenomenon began to form a warp rift, a gateway to a realm of madness and despair. The Wolf's Fang, already grappling with damage from the relentless assault, found its engines faltering, its maneuverability compromised. Hrothgar felt a chill as he realized their predicament. The warp was a place of nightmares, where the very fabric of reality unraveled and unspeakable horrors lurked. He bellowed orders, attempting to steer the ship away, but it was too late. The rift's gravitational pull was inexorable. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring as reality itself seemed to warp and bend. Hrothgar and his pack were thrown to the ground, the world spinning around them. He caught a glimpse of his brothers, their expressions a mix of determination and apprehension before a blinding light enveloped everything. When the light faded, the Wolf's Fang and the Fenrisian Shadows found themselves adrift in the warp. The familiar stars of the galaxy were gone, replaced by a miasma of colours and sounds that defied understanding. Hrothgar rose, his senses on high alert. They were in the domain of chaos now, far from the Emperor's light. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dark. The Wolf's Fang drifted aimlessly in the surreal expanse of the warp, a realm where time and space lost all meaning. Brother Hrothgar, his features set in grim determination, took stock of the situation. The bridge, usually alight with the glow of tactical displays, was now bathed in an otherworldly luminescence that seeped through the viewports. His brothers, resilient warriors of the Fenrisian Shadows, stood in silent vigilance. Their eyes, accustomed to the stark realities of war, now reflected the unsettling, kaleidoscopic vistas outside. The ship's systems, designed for the material universe, faltered in this realm of chaos. Holographic maps flickered in and out of existence, their data scrambled by the warp's capricious nature. The usual roar of the engines was replaced by an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional groan of the ship's hull. Outside, the warp pulsed with a life of its own. Nebulous clouds of vibrant colors flowed and merged, forming shapes that defied logic. Stars and galaxies seemed to dance in a macabre ballet, choreographed by unseen malevolent forces. Then came the whispers. At first they were barely audible, like the faintest breeze caressing the leaves of a tree, but slowly they grew in intensity, a cacophony of voices that seemed to echo from the very depths of the warp. They spoke in tongues both alien and eerily familiar, weaving tales of glory and despair, temptation and warning. Hrothgar, ever the unyielding leader, tried to rally his men. "Brothers, steel your minds," he commanded, his voice cutting through the maddening chorus. "These are but tricks of the warp, seeking to ensnare us in doubt and fear. We are space wolves, sons of Rus, we will not falter." His words brought momentary focus to the squad, their training and indomitable will momentarily pushing back against the warp's influence. But as the ship plunged deeper into this realm of insanity, the whispers grew more insistent, more personal. Each space wolf began to experience haunting echoes of their past, the voices morphing into figures from their lives, lost comrades, fallen enemies, spectres of guilt and regret. The warp, it seemed, was probing their minds, searching for cracks in their armor of resolve. Chapter 3. Echoes of Fenris. In the suffocating grip of the warp, the Fenrisian Shadows found themselves besieged not by physical foes but by the spectres of their own past. The wolf's fang became a crucible of memories, each space wolf ensnared in their own private battles. Brother Alric's vision was particularly poignant. He found himself back on the icy plains of Fenris, his mother's eyes brimming with unshed tears as she bid him farewell. Her whispered words of love and pride echoed in his ears, a painful reminder of the life and family he had left behind for the call of the chapter. Brother Gunnar, typically an unmovable bastion of strength, was drawn back to a battle-scarred field where he saw himself cradling the lifeless body of a fallen brother. The guilt of his perceived failure, of not being fast enough, strong enough, bore down on him with crushing weight. His usually impassive face was etched with silent torment. For Hrothgar, the visions were a bitter reminder of the day he was chosen by the wolf priests. Surrounded by his kin, their faces etched with a mixture of pride and sorrow, he was torn between the honor of his selection and the sorrow of leaving his family behind. The memory of his father's proud nod and his brother's envious gaze haunted him, a stark reminder of the duality of his existence, celebrated yet forever separated from his roots. These visions, woven from the fabric of their most intimate memories, tested the space wolves. They were reminders of their sacrifices, of the personal cost of their transformation from mere Fenrisian warriors to the Emperor's chosen space marines. The pain of these memories was a sharp contrast to their usual battlefield experiences, where physical prowess and tactical acumen reigned supreme. Chapter 4. The False Brother, Eric, the enigmatic figure claiming to be a lost space wolf, stood before the Fenrisian Shadows, his presence an odd juxtaposition amidst the warp-induced chaos. His armor, though scarred by the ravages of time and battle, bore the sacred insignia of the space wolves, albeit from a bygone era. Hrothgar's eyes narrowed as he studied Eric. The newcomer spoke with a resonance that seemed to transcend the warp's dissonance. His tales of wandering the warp, battling its horrors, and uncovering its secrets were both mesmerizing and unnerving. He spoke of pathways hidden within the warp's labyrinth, paths that could lead them back to real space. The squad, gathered around, listened with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Brother Alric, his youthful face showing a hint of wonder, seemed drawn to Eric's stories of ancient battles and lost heroes. Gunnar, however, remained stoic and suspicious, his eyes never leaving Eric. Hrothgar called a private council with his most trusted brothers. In the dimly lit confines of the ship's strategy room, they debated their course of action. Trusting Eric was a gamble. The warp was known for its treacherous illusions, yet Hrothgar couldn't dismiss the possibility that Eric might be their only hope of escape. They agreed on a cautious alliance, deciding to observe Eric's every move for any sign of treachery. As they emerged from the council, Eric greeted them with a knowing smile, as if aware of their deliberations. Leading them through the corridors of the Wolf's Fang, Eric spoke of a ritual that could pierce the veil of the warp, revealing the path home. His knowledge of the arcane was extensive, yet it raised more questions than answers. As they delved deeper into the ship, following Eric's lead, the warp's influence grew stronger. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding, and the ship's walls seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The Fenrisian Shadows were warriors of the highest caliber, yet here in the warp they treaded a battlefield unlike any they had known. Chapter 5. The Path of Temptation. The corridors of the Wolf's Fang seemed to warp and twist as the Fenrisian Shadows delved deeper, following Eric to the ritual chamber. The very structure of the ship appeared to bend under the warp's influence, hallways elongating and contracting in impossible ways, shadows dancing at the corners of their vision. Eric's presence was a beacon of certainty in the maelstrom. He moved with an assurance that belied the chaos around them, his knowledge of the warp both profound and unsettling. As he described the ritual, his voice took on a reverential tone, speaking of ancient rites and forgotten powers that could harness the warp's energy. The temptations of the warp intensified with each step, preying upon the space wolves' innermost desires and fears. Illusions wove themselves into the fabric of reality, offering Brother Alric a vision of Fenrisian plains, where his family awaited him with open arms, a life unmarred by the constant spectre of war. For Gunnar, the warp conjured images of martial glory, battlefields where he stood as a conqueror, his name revered across the galaxy as one of the greatest heroes of the Space Wolves. And Hrothgar, their stoic leader, faced his own haunting visions, spectral figures of fallen comrades, moments of loss and regret replaying in his mind, offering him the chance to alter these painful memories, to save those he had once lost. These visions, so achingly real, tested the Space Wolves' resolve, yet their training and unshakable faith in the Emperor served as an anchor, reminding them of their duty and the impermanence of these illusory offerings. The ritual chamber, when they finally arrived, was a cavernous space at the heart of the ship. Runes glowed faintly along the walls, pulsating with warp energy. The air was electric, the boundary between reality and the immaterial growing thinner. Eric's eyes, once filled with the light of knowledge and purpose, now flickered with something more sinister, a dark anticipation. Hrothgar sensed the shift, a taut string in the symphony of chaos. He signalled his pack, a silent command to be ready for any treachery. Chapter 6. Hrothgar's Burden. The ritual chamber, steeped in the ancient lore of forgotten eras, echoed with the chants of Eric and the whispers of the warp. Hrothgar, standing like a sentinel amidst the unfolding ceremony, was a study in stoic leadership masking an internal tempest. His eyes, reflecting the faint glow of the arcane runes, scanned his brothers in arms. They were warriors of Fenris, each honed through trials and tribulations, yet none had faced a challenge as obscure and treacherous as the one they confronted now in the warp's heart. As Eric's incantations grew more fervent, the air itself seemed to pulse with energy. Hrothgar felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up, a primal reaction to the unseen forces gathering around them. The very fabric of reality appeared to warp and twist, the chamber's ancient runes glowing brighter with each passing moment. The burden of command lay heavy on Hrothgar's broad shoulders. His decision to trust Eric, a figure shrouded in mystery and potential deceit, was a gamble with the highest stakes. His thoughts drifted to the cold, unforgiving landscapes of Fenris, the teachings of his mentors and the sacred oaths he had sworn. These memories served as a beacon, guiding him through the fog of uncertainty. Hrothgar's resolve was the unbreakable core of the Fenrisian Shadows, a bastion against both the physical dangers of the warp and the mental onslaught of doubt and fear. As the ritual reached its zenith, the chamber thrumming with otherworldly power, he steeled himself for whatever outcome their actions might yield. Chapter 7. The Demon Revealed. As the ritual's climax tore through the chamber, reality itself seemed to fracture. The blinding light that had engulfed Eric now dimmed, revealing a horror that dwarfed any creature of flesh and blood. The demon, a being of the warp, stood in their midst, its form a swirling mass of shadows and malice, faces of torment twisting across its surface. The Fenrisian Shadows, momentarily frozen by the sheer malevolence before them, quickly snapped into action. Hrothgar's voice, hardened by countless battles, rang out clear and commanding. "To arms, brothers! Let none falter this day!" The demon, basking in the unveiled terror, unleashed waves of psychic energy, tendrils of thought seeking to pry into the minds of the Space Wolves. Images of despair and defeat, designed to break their will, flickered before their eyes. But the wolves of Fenris were forged in the fires of adversity, their minds tempered against such assaults. Brother Ulrich, his youthful face set in a mask of determination, charged ahead, his chainsword a blur of motion. Gunnar, his expression unchanging, provided covering fire, his bolter rounds exploding against the demon's form, each shot a defiant act of resistance. Hrothgar engaged the beast directly, his power sword gleaming with a cold light. Each strike was a dance of death, a testament to his skill and fury. The demon, however, was a creature of the warp, its form shifting and contorting, making it an elusive and dangerous foe. The battle raged, a symphony of steel and willpower. The chamber echoed with the sounds of combat, the clang of weapons, and the snarls of space wolves facing their betrayer. It was a fight not just for survival, but for the very essence of their souls, a battle against a creature that embodied the anathema of all they stood for. Chapter 8. Stand of the Faithful. The ritual chamber, now a battlefield bathed in the uncanny light of the warp, resonated with the clash of steel and the primal roars of the Fenrisian Shadows. The air crackled with psychic energy as the demon, a monstrous entity of the warp, unleashed its fury in waves of malevolent power. Hrothgar, like a beacon of unyielding defiance, led his brothers with a ferocity that echoed the legends of Leman Russ himself. His power sword, an ancient relic of the chapter, blazed with a fierce light, each strike a testament to his skill and determination. Gunnar, his bolter, a relentless force of retribution, fired salvo after salvo. The explosive rounds tore into the demon, briefly disrupting its grotesque form, only for it to reform, a nightmarish vision of resilience. Young Ulrich, his chainsword singing a deadly hymn, moved with a grace that belied his years. Each sweep of his blade was a dance of death, a furious ballet amidst the chaos. His eyes, once filled with the innocence of youth, now burned with the fire of a seasoned warrior. The demon, a creature of deception and despair, sought to unravel their brotherhood, whispering lies and doubts designed to erode their unity. But the space wolves, sons of Fenris, stood as one. Their chants, a blend of Fenrisian battle hymns and oaths to the Emperor, formed a shield against the demon's insidious words. Chapter 9. Rift of Salvation. The ritual chamber, now a vortex of chaotic energies, became the stage for Ulrich's ultimate sacrifice. His movements were a blur as he darted through the melee, dodging the demon's attacks with the agility of a wolf. Reaching the core, Ulrich set his grenades, his hands steady despite the maelstrom around him. As he activated the detonation, a poignant calmness settled over him. He thought of Fenris, the howling winds, and the pack he considered family. With a final, determined breath, he triggered the explosion. The blast was monumental, a crescendo of light and force that rocked the wolf's fang. The energy matrix unraveled, tearing a gaping rift in the warp's fabric. Reality bent and twisted, opening a passage to the material realm. The Fenrisian Shadows, amidst their grief and shock, knew this was their only chance. They charged towards the rift, each step heavy with the weight of Ulrich's sacrifice. Hrothgar, his heart heavy, led the way, his thoughts a tumult of sorrow for the fallen brother and determination to honor his memory. Chapter 10. Homood Bound. As the reality of the material universe settled around them, the Fenrisian Shadows found themselves adrift in the cold expanse of space aboard the remains of the wolf's fang. The relief of escape was overshadowed by a profound loss. Each member of the pack felt the absence of brother Ulrich, his sacrifice a stark reminder of the costs they bore as defenders of the Imperium. Hrothgar, standing amidst his brothers, felt the weight of command more acutely than ever. He knew that Ulrich's bravery had saved them all, yet the burden of that loss was his to bear. The squad gathered in a solemn ceremony, honoring their fallen brother with chants and oaths, vowing to uphold his legacy. As they set course back to Fenris, the Space Wolves reflected on their ordeal. They had faced the warp and its horrors, emerging not only survivors, but as embodiments of the Space Wolves' indomitable spirit. The journey home was silent, each warrior lost in thought, but united in their resolve to continue the fight against the darkness that threatened the galaxy. As the wolf's fang drifted slowly through the vastness of space, the silence of the void enveloped the Fenrisian Shadows. The ship, scarred and battered, was a stark testament to their harrowing journey. Inside, the space wolves gathered in the dim light of the bridge, their faces etched with the fatigue of battle and the pain of loss. Hrothgar, standing before the assembled warriors, spoke words of remembrance for brother Ulrich. His voice, tinged with both pride and sorrow, recounted Ulrich's bravery, ensuring that his sacrifice would be etched in the annals of the chapter's history. The ritual was simple, yet profound, with each space wolf adding their voice in a solemn vow to continue the fight in Ulrich's memory. The journey back to Fenris was introspective, each warrior grappling with the experiences within the warp. They shared stories of Ulrich, smiles and laughter mingling with tears as they celebrated his life and deeds. Yet beneath this camaraderie there was a shared understanding of the relentless war they waged, a war that demanded great sacrifices. As Fenris appeared on the horizon, a sense of homecoming filled the ship. The planet, with its harsh landscapes and unforgiving climate, was a reminder of the resilience and strength of the Space Wolves. They returned not only as warriors who had faced the unimaginable, but as brothers forged stronger in the crucible of adversity. Upon their return, the Fenrisian Shadows were met with the deep, resonant tones of the Gjallarhorn, heralding their return. Their brethren, lining the great hall of the Fang, the Space Wolves' fortress monastery, offered solemn nods of respect. The tale of their harrowing journey through the warp and the sacrifice of Ulrich was already becoming the stuff of legend. Hrothgar, standing tall yet wearied, felt the gaze of Logan Grimnar, the great wolf, upon him. In that gaze there was an unspoken understanding of the burden Hrothgar carried, the weight of loss and leadership. The squad gathered in the Hall of Heroes, where Ulrich's name was etched onto the great memorial. This sacred act was not just a remembrance, but a celebration of his spirit, ensuring his bravery would inspire generations of space wolves to come.